How are you doing, weirdos? I hope you're sleepy and ready for some space effects. Please close your eyes and lay down. I promise the screen is staying black for the entire video. For this video, we are going to talk about the 4 inner planets of our solar system. The 4 inner planets are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, in that order. Mercury is our smallest planet. Venus is the 6th largest. Earth is the 5th largest. And Mars is the 7th largest. Everything that I will be reading to you is straight from NASA. Straight from NASA. I will link NASA in the description in case you'd like to explore more on your own, as I am not going to be reading every single detail about the planets unless you'd like me to. But if it wasn't clear, this video will be the inner planets, and then I will make another video for the outer planets. So without further ado, the screen is now black, and I will now go into information mode. Mercury's surface temperatures are both extremely hot and cold. Because the planet is so close to the sun, day temperatures can reach highs of 800 degrees Fahrenheit or 430 degrees Celsius. Without an atmosphere to retain that heat at night, temperatures can dip as low as a negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures can dip as low as a negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 180 degrees Celsius. Despite its proximity to the sun, Mercury is not the hottest planet in our solar system. That title belongs to nearby Venus, thanks to its dense atmosphere. Side note from myself, Venus basically makes a greenhouse effect. Back to NASA. Mercury is the fastest planet, zipping around the sun every 88 Earth days. It's appropriately named for the swiftest of the ancient Roman gods. Mercury's environment is not conducive to life as we know it. The temperatures and solar radiation that characterize this planet are most likely too extreme for organisms to adapt to. With a radius of 1,516 miles, or 2,440 kilometers, Mercury is a little more than a third the width of Earth. If Earth were the size of a nickel, Mercury would be about as big as a blueberry. From an average distance of 36 million miles, or 58 million kilometers, Mercury Mercury's highly eccentric egg-shaped orbit takes the planet as close as 29 million miles, or 47 million kilometers, and as far as 43 million miles, or 70 million kilometers from the Sun. It speeds around the Sun every 88 days, traveling through space at nearly 29 miles, or 47 kilometers per second, faster than any other planet. Mercury spins slowly on its axis and completes one rotation every 59 Earth days. But when Mercury is moving fastest in its elliptical orbit around the Sun, and it is closest to the Sun, each rotation is not accompanied by sunrise and sunset like it is on most other planets. The morning sun appears to rise briefly, set, and rise again from some parts of the planet's surface. The same thing happens in reverse at sunset for other parts of the surface. One Mercury solar day, also known as one full day-night cycle, equals 176 Earth days, just over 2 years on Mercury. Mercury's axis of rotation is tilted just 2 degrees with respect to the plane of its orbit around the Sun. That means it spins nearly perfectly upright, and so does not experience seasons as many other planets do. Mercury does not have any moons or rings. Mercury formed about 4.5 billion years ago, when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust together to form the small planet nearest the Sun. Like its fellow terrestrial planets, Mercury has a central core, a rocky mantle, and a solid crust. Side note from me, terrestrial planets is another way to say the inner planets. Back to NASA. Mercury is the second densest planet after Earth. It has a large metallic core with a radius of about 1,289 miles, or 2,074 kilometers, about 85% of the planet's radius. There is evidence that it is partly molten or liquid. Mercury's outer shell, comparable to Earth's outer shell, called the mantle and crust, is only about 250 miles, or about 400 kilometers thick. Mercury's surface resembles that of Earth's moon, scarred by many impact craters resulting from collisions with meteoroids and comets. Craters and features on Mercury are named after famous deceased artists, musicians, or authors, including children's author Dr. Seuss and dance pioneer Alvin Ailey. Very large impact basins, including Caloris, 960 miles or 1,550 kilometers in diameter. And side note, I do not know how to say this, but back to my attempt at NASA. And rose as the planet's interior cooled and contracted over the billions of years since Mercury formed. Most of Mercury's surface would appear grayish-brown to the human eye. The bright streaks are called crater rays. Crater rays. They are formed when an asteroid or comet strikes the surface. The tremendous amount of energy that is released in such an impact digs a big hole in the ground and also crushes a huge amount of rock under the point of impact. Some of this crushed material is thrown far from the crater and then falls to the surface, forming the rays. Fine particles of crushed rock are more reflective than large pieces, so the rays look brighter. The space environment, dust impacts, and solar wind particles causes the rays to darken with time. Temperatures on Mercury are extreme. During the day, temperatures on the surface can reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit or 430 degrees Celsius. Because the planet has no atmosphere to retain that heat, nighttime temperatures on the surface can drop to minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 180 degrees Celsius. Mercury may have water ice at its north and south poles. May have water ice. How about water and ice? NASA. At its north and south poles, inside deep craters, but only in regions in permanent shadows. In those shadows, it could be cold enough to preserve water ice. Is water ice a specific thing? Wouldn't that just be half melted ice? Anyway, back to NASA. I apologize. Go to sleep. Enough to preserve water ice despite the high temperatures on sunlit parts of the planet. Instead of an atmosphere, Mercury possesses a thin exosphere made up of atoms blasted off the surface by the solar wind and striking meteoroids. Mercury's exosphere is composed mostly of oxygen, sodium, hydrogen, helium, and potassium. That concludes what I will tell you about Mercury. We will now move on to the hottest planet, Venus. Venus is the second planet from the Sun and Earth's closest planetary neighbor. Venus is the third brightest object in the sky, after the Sun and Moon. Venus spins slowly in the opposite direction from most planets. Venus is similar in structure and size to Earth, and is sometimes called Earth's evil twin. Its thick atmosphere traps heat in a runaway greenhouse effect, making it the hottest planet in our solar system with surface temperatures hot enough to melt lead. So the next time you want to compliment someone, tell them they're hot enough to melt lead. Below the dense... Oh, that was from me, by the way. Back to NASA. Below the dense, persistent clouds, the surface has volcanoes and deformed mountains. The ancient Romans could easily see 7 bright objects in the sky: the sun, the moon, and the 5 brightest planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. the objects after their most important gods. Venus is named for the ancient Roman goddess of love and beauty, who was known as Aphrodite to the ancient Greeks. Most features on Venus are named for women. It's the only planet named after a female god. 30 miles up from the surface of Venus, temperatures range from 86 to 158 Fahrenheit. 30 miles is about 50 kilometers. 86 to 158 Fahrenheit is about 30 to 70 Celsius. This temperature range could accommodate earthly life, such as extremophile microbes, and atmospheric pressure at that height is similar to what we find on Earth's surface. At the top of Venus's clouds, whipped around the planet by winds measured as high as 224 miles per hour, or 360 kilometers per hour, we find another transformation. Persistent dark streaks appear. Scientists are so far unable to explain why these streaks remain stubbornly intact, even amid hurricane-force winds. They also have the odd habit of absorbing ultraviolet radiation. The most likely explanations focus on fine particles, ice crystals, or even a chemical compound called iron chloride. Although it's much less likely, another possibility considered by scientists who study astrobiology is that these streaks could be made up of microbial life, Venus-style. Astrobiologists note that ring-shaped linkages of sulfur atoms known to exist in Venus's atmosphere could provide microbes with a kind of coating that would protect them from sulfuric acid. These handy chemical cloaks would also absorb potentially damaging ultraviolet light and re-radiate it as visible light. Some of the Russian Venera probes did indeed detect particles in Venus's lower atmosphere about a micron in length, roughly the same size as a bacterium on Earth. None of these findings provide compelling evidence for the existence of life in Venus's clouds. But the questions they raise, along with Venus's vanished ocean, its violently volcanic surface, and its hellish history, make a compelling case for missions to investigate our temperamental sister planet. There is much, it would seem, that she can teach us. Venus orbits the Sun from an average distance of 67 million miles, or 108 million kilometers, or 0.72 astronomical units. And if you forgot, 1 astronomical unit is the distance from the Sun to Earth. From this distance, it takes sunlight about 6 minutes to travel from the Sun to Venus. And if I'm not mistaken, it takes 8 minutes for it to travel to Earth. If you were unaware of that and wanted to compare that to Venus, that was an Adoration ASMR fact, not NASA. Back to NASA. Earth's nearness to Venus is a matter of perspective. The planet is nearly as big around as Earth. Its diameter at its equator is about 7,521 miles versus 7,926 miles for Earth. And for you kilometer freaks, Venus is 12,104 kilometers. versus Earth, 12,756 kilometers. From Earth, Venus is the brightest object in the night sky after our own moon. The ancients, therefore, gave it great importance in their cultures, even thinking it was two objects, a morning star and an evening star. That's where the trick of perspective comes in. Because Venus's orbit is closer to the sun than ours, the two of them, from our viewpoint, never stray far from each other. The ancient Egyptians and Greeks saw Venus in two guises. First, in one orbital position, seen in the morning. Then another, your evening Venus, just at different times of the year. At its nearest to Earth, Venus is about 24 million, or about 38 million kilometers away. Dear NASA, you forgot to put miles after 24 million. Sincerely, Adoration ASMR. Back to NASA. But most of the time, the two planets are farther apart. The maximum distance between Venus and Earth is about 162 million miles, or 261 million kilometers. Mercury, the innermost planet, actually spends more time in Earth's proximity than Venus. One more trick of perspective. How Venus looks through binoculars or a telescope. Keep watch over many months, and you'll notice that Venus has phases just like our moon. Full, half, quarter, etc. The complete cycle, however, new to full, takes 584 days, while our moon takes just a month. And it was this perspective, the phases of Venus first observed by Galileo through his telescope, that provided the key scientific proof for the Copernican heliocentric nature of the solar system. I'm trying to think if I've even seen that C word before. I know heliocentric, but anyway, go to sleep. Spending a day on Venus would be quite a disorienting experience. That is, if your spacecraft or spacesuit could protect you from temperatures in the range of 900 degrees Fahrenheit or 475 degrees Celsius. For one thing, your day would be 243 Earth days long, longer even than a Venus year, which takes only 225 Earth days. For another, because of the planet's extremely slow rotation, sunrise to sunset would take 117 Earth days. And by the way, the sun would rise in the west and set in the east because Venus spins backward compared to Earth. While you're waiting, don't expect any seasonal relief from the unrelenting temperatures. On Earth, with its spin axis tilted by about 23 degrees, we experience summer when our part of the planet receives the sun's rays more directly, a result of that tilt. In winter, the tilt means the rays are less direct. No such luck on Venus. Its very slight tilt is only 3 degrees, which is too little to produce noticeable seasons. Venus is one of only 2 planets in our solar system that doesn't have a moon, but it does have a quasi-satellite that has officially been named Soozve, Coozve, which is essentially an asteroid that orbits the sun while staying close to Venus. I am not going to read specifics on Zeusby. Do you remember that Mercury is the other planet without a moon? Venus, like Mercury, has no rings. And no moon. A critical question for scientists who search for life among the stars. How do habitable planets get their start? The close similarities of early Venus and Earth and their very different fates provide a kind of test case for scientists who study planet formation. Similar size, similar interior structure, both harboring oceans in their younger days. Yet one is now an inferno, while the other is the only known world to host abundant life. The factors that set these planets on almost opposite paths began most likely in the swirling disk of gas and dust from which they were born. Somehow, 4.6 billion years ago, that disk around our sun accreted, cooled, and settled into the planets we know today. Better knowledge of the formation history of Venus could help us better understand Earth and rocky planets around other stars. If we could slice Venus and Earth in half, pole to pole, and place them side by side, they would look remarkably similar. Each planet has an iron core enveloped by a hot rock mantle. The thinnest of skins forms a rocky exterior crust. On both planets, this thin skin changes form and sometimes erupts into volcanoes in response to the ebb and flow of heat and pressure deep beneath. On Earth, the slow movement of continents over thousands and millions of years reshapes the surface, a process known as plate tectonics. Plate tectonics. Something similar might have happened on Venus early in its history. Today, a key element of this process could be operating subduction, or the sliding of one continental plate beneath another, which could also trigger volcanoes. Subduction is believed to be the first step in creating a plate tectonics. NASA's Magellan spacecraft, which ended a 5-year mission to Venus in 1994, mapped the broiling surface using radar. Magellan saw a land of extreme volcanism, a relatively young surface, one recently reshaped in geologic terms, and chains of towering mountains. Venus has valleys and high mountains dotted with thousands of volcanoes. Its surface features, most named for both real and mythical women, include Ishtar Terra, a rocky highland area around the size of Australia near the North Pole, and an even larger South America-sized region called Aphrodite Terra that stretches across the equator. One mountain reaches 36,000 feet, higher than Mount Everest. Notably, except for Earth, Venus has by far the fewest impact craters of any rocky planet. Other notable features of the Venus landscape include a volcanic crater named Sacagawea for Lewis and Clark's Native American Guide, a deep canyon called Diana for the Roman goddess of the hunt, pancake domes with flat tops and steep sides as wide as 38 miles or 62 kilometers, likely formed by the extrusion of highly viscous lava. Tick domes, odd volcanoes with radiating spurs that, from above, make them look like their blood-feeding namesake. terrain with intricate patterns of ridges and grooves that suggest the scorching temperatures make rock behave in some ways more like peanut butter beneath a thin and strong chocolate layer on Venus. That concludes the Venus portion. Now we move on to Earth. Did you know that Earth is the only planet with water on it? And that the name Earth is about 1,000 years old. All of the planets except for Earth were named after Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. However, the name Earth is a Germanic word which simply means the ground. Earth has a very hospitable temperature and mix of chemicals that have made life abundant here. Most notably, Earth is unique in that most of our planet is covered in liquid water since the temperature allows liquid water to exist for extended periods of time. Earth's vast oceans provided a convenient place for life to begin about 3.8 billion years ago. Some of the features of our planet that make it great for sustaining life are changing due to the ongoing effects of climate change. With an equatorial diameter of 7,926 miles or 12,756 kilometers, Earth is the biggest of the terrestrial planets and the fifth largest planet in our solar system. From an average distance of 93 million miles, or 150 million kilometers, Earth is exactly 1 astronomical unit away from the Sun, because 1 astronomical unit is the distance from the Sun to Earth. If you're still awake and listening to this video, you better remember what an astronomical unit is. Because personally, I think that it is drilled into my brain at this point. Back to NASA. This unit provides an easy way to quickly compare planets' distances from the Sun. It takes about 8 minutes for light from the Sun to reach our planet. I told you that earlier, you better have remembered. Back to NASA. As Earth orbits the Sun, it completes 1 rotation every 23.9 hours. It takes 365.25 days to complete 1 trip around the Sun. That extra quarter of a day presents a challenge to our calendar system, which counts 1 year as 365 days. To keep our yearly calendars consistent with their orbit around the Sun, every 4 years we add 1 day. That day is called a leap day, and the year it's added to is called a leap year. If you're still awake and you just learned that fact from this video, you better be like 7 years old, because you should have already known that. Earth's axis of rotation is tilted 23.4 degrees with respect to the plane of Earth's orbit around the Sun. This tilt causes our yearly cycle of seasons. During part of the year, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the Sun, and the southern hemisphere is tilted away. With the Sun higher in the sky, solar heating is greater in the north, producing summer there. Less direct solar heating produces winter in the south. 6 months later, the situation is reversed. When spring and fall begin, both hemispheres receive roughly equal amounts of heat from the Sun. We should all know that Earth has 1 moon. But did you know that Earth is the only planet in our solar system with only 1 moon? So we have Mercury and Venus with 0 moons. 0 moons. And then we have Earth with 1 moon. Adoration ASMR fact. favorite planet has the most moons? Back to NASA. Earth has no rings. I would hope you already knew that. When the solar system settled into its current layout about 4.5 billion years ago, Earth formed when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust in to become the third planet from the Sun. Like its fellow terrestrial planets, Earth has a central core, a rocky mantle, and a solid crust. Now, do you remember what I said about terrestrial planets? That's right. Good job. Good job. That's right. It's our inner planets. Earth is composed of four main layers, starting with an inner core at the planet's center, enveloped by the outer core, mantle, and crust. Near the surface, Earth has an atmosphere that consists of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% other gases, such as argon, carbon dioxide, and neon. The atmosphere affects Earth's long-term climate and short-term local weather, and shields us from much of the harmful radiation coming from the sun. It also protects us from meteoroids, most of which burn up in the atmosphere, seen as meteors in the night sky, before they can strike the surface as meteorites. So, I am going to move on from Earth, because a lot of this you simply should have learned in science classes by just going to school. Earth had a lot more of a focus in mind personally, so I'm going to assume that you guys had a similar situation, because I did not go to a fantastic school. So, Mars is one of the most explored bodies in our solar system, and it's the only planet where we've sent rovers to roam the alien landscape. NASA missions have found lots of evidence that Mars was much wetter and warmer, with a thicker atmosphere billions of years ago. Mars was named by the ancient Romans for their god of war because its reddish color was reminiscent of blood. Other civilizations also named the planet for this attribute. For example, the Egyptians called it Herdeshur, meaning the red one. Even today, it is frequently called the red planet because iron minerals in the Martian dirt oxidize or rust, causing the surface to look red. Scientists don't expect to find living things currently thriving on Mars. Instead, they're looking for signs of life that existed long ago when Mars was warmer and covered with water. Side note from Adoration ASMR. The Martian by Andy Weir, a book, is really cool and decently scientific if you'd like to read something fictitious, of course, about Mars. Back to NASA. With a radius of 2,106 miles, or 3,390 kilometers, Mars is about half the size of Earth. If Earth were the size of a nickel, Mars would be about as big as a raspberry. As opposed to Mercury being about the size of a blueberry. short for solar day. A year on Mars lasts 669.6 sols, which is the same as 687 Earth days. A note from me again. The Martian would have taught you that, as when he keeps track of the days that he is on Mars, he uses sols. Back to NASA. Mars's axis of rotation is tilted 25 degrees with respect to the plane of its orbit around the Sun. This is another similarity with Earth, which has an axial tilt of 23.4 degrees. Like Earth, Mars has distinct seasons, but they last longer than seasons here on Earth, since Mars takes longer to orbit the Sun because it's farther away. And while here on Earth, the seasons are evenly spread over the year, lasting 3 months or 1/4 of a year. On Mars, the seasons vary in length because of Mars' elliptical egg-shaped orbit around the Sun. Spring in the northern hemisphere and autumn in the southern is the longest season at 194 sols. Autumn in the northern hemisphere, which is spring in the southern, is the shortest at 142 days. Northern winter and southern summer is 154 sols, and northern summer and southern winter is 178 sols. Mars has 2 small moons, Phobos and Deimos, that may be captured asteroids. They're potato-shaped because they have too little mass for gravity to make them spherical. The moons got their names from the horses that pulled the chariot of the Greek god of war, Ares. Phobos, the innermost and larger moon, is heavily cratered with deep grooves on its surface. It is slowly moving towards Mars and will crash into the planet or break apart in about 50 million years. Deimos is about half as big as Phobos and orbits 2.5 times farther away from Mars. It is oddly shaped and covered in loose dirt that often fills the craters on its surface, making it appear smoother than pockmarked Phobos. Mars has no rings, but if Phobos does eventually crash into Mars, or if it breaks apart, it could create a dusty ring around Mars. When the solar system settled into its current layout about 4.5 billion years ago, Mars formed when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust in to become the 4th planet from the Sun. Mars is about half the size of Earth, and like its fellow terrestrial planets, it has a central core, a rocky mantle, and a solid crust. Mars has a dense core at its center between 930 and 1300 miles in radius, or 1500 to 2100 kilometers. It's made of iron, nickel, and sulfur. Surrounding the core is a rocky mantle between 770 and 1,170 miles thick, or 1,240 to 1,880 kilometers. And above that, a crust made of iron, magnesium, aluminum, calcium, and potassium. This crust is between 6 and 30 miles, or 10 to 50 kilometers deep. The red planet is actually many colors. We primarily see the brown, gold, tan, and mostly reddish due to oxidization, which we went over earlier, which is essentially rust of iron in the rocks. Mars has a very large canyon system, not going to try and say the name, but I'll spell it for you to be unique. VALLES space MARINERIS. And it's long enough to stretch from California to New York, which is over 3,000 miles or 4,800 kilometers. This Martian canyon is 200 miles at its widest and 4.3 miles at its deepest, which is 320 kilometers at its widest and 7 kilometers at its deepest. That's about 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon. Mars is home to the largest volcano in our solar system, Olympus Mons. It's 3 times taller than Earth's Mount Everest, which rises 29,029 feet, or 8,848 meters above the Earth's surface, with a base the size of the state of New Mexico. Mars has a thin atmosphere made up mostly of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and argon gases. To our eyes, the sky would be hazy and red because of the suspended dust instead of the familiar blue tint we see on Earth. Mars's sparse atmosphere doesn't offer much protection from impacts by such objects as meteorites, asteroids, and comets. The temperature on Mars can be as high as 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, or as low as about negative 225 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 153 degrees Celsius. And because the atmosphere is so thin, heat from the sun easily escapes this planet. If you were to stand on the surface of Mars on the equator at noon, it would feel like spring at your feet and winter at your head. Occasionally, winds on Mars are strong enough to create dust storms that cover much of the planet. After such storms, it can be months before all of the dust settles. And now you're back to me, not NASA. The Martian actually has one of those storms happen. Just saying. That concludes the inner planets. If you're still awake, you need to restart the video or something. And go to bed. Go to bed. Sleep well. Good night. Good night. Good night. Sleep well. Buenos noches.